I exposed my golden child brother at our family reunion, and now everyone hates me. The look on Danny's face when I played the recording? Worth every single person in that room turning against me. He's always been the favorite, the successful lawyer, the charming one, the one who made something of himself. Meanwhile, I was the disappointment, struggling through community college and bouncing between retail jobs. What they didn't know was that Danny had been stealing from our elderly grandmother. For 2 years. I found out by accident, helping her organize her finances. I saw checks made out to Daniel, thousands of dollars, signed in her shaky handwriting. When I asked her about it, she looked confused. Danny said those were for his law school loans, she said. But didn't he graduate years ago? I confronted him privately. Gave him a chance to come clean, pay it back, do the right thing. He laughed in my face. Who's gonna believe you? You're the family screw-up. I'm the one with the law degree. Then he leaned in close. If you breathe a word of this, I'll tell them you were stealing. You'll never see a dime. So I started recording everything. Phone calls, texts, 3 weeks of evidence. Him admitting to the theft, bragging about manipulating grandma, even joking about how he'd blame me if anyone found out. The reunion was for grandma's 85th birthday. The whole family was there, about 40 people. Danny, as usual, was center stage, telling courtroom stories, making everyone laugh. That's when I stood up. I said a few words about grandma, about her sacrifices, her trust, how much she meant to us. Then I pulled out my phone and played the recording. Danny's voice echoed through the room. The old bat doesn't even remember writing the checks. I could probably get another 10 grand before anyone notices. Then that cold laugh. The room fell silent. Grandma began to cry. Mom looked like she might be sick. Danny's face went pale, then red. He exploded. Accused me of lying. Said I faked it. That I was jealous. Pathetic. But here's the part one didn't expect. Instead of thanking me, half the family turned on me. My uncle called me vindictive. My cousin said I ruined grandma's birthday. Even my own mother pulled me aside and whispered, "Did you have to do it like that?" In front of everyone. Even with all the evidence, I became the villain. The one who tore the family apart. Grandma? She kept asking if Danny was okay. If he needed help. If he was in trouble. Even after everything, she wasn't angry. She was just worried. Then yesterday, I got a call from her bank. Danny had shown up the day after the reunion, trying to withdraw money with forged documents. Claimed he had power of attorney. The paperwork looked legit. But Grandma never gave him that authority. Turns out, the bank had been investigating. Danny was running a scheme, targeting elderly clients. Grandma wasn't his only victim. When I arrived, there was an FBI agent waiting. Special Agent Chen. She told me that my recording gave them the final piece of the puzzle. They'd been building a federal fraud case. But then she added something that made my stomach drop. We need to talk about your grandmother's will. It was changed recently, last month. Danny is now the sole beneficiary. I was stunned. That couldn't be real. Grandma would never do that. Chen showed me the document. Her signature. Witnessed. Notarized. But the handwriting? It didn't match. Too shaky. Wrong style. My phone started buzzing with messages. The first voicemail? It was my mother. Danny's been arrested. The FBI raided his office. What did you do? I couldn't fit the full story here. Watch the rest in the video below. The second voicemail was from my Aunt Sarah, her voice shaking. The FBI wants to interview all of us. They're saying Danny stole from dozens of people. How long have you known? I sat in my car outside the bank, hands trembling as I listened to message after message. My cousin Jake. You destroyed our family. My uncle Mark. I hope you're happy now. But buried in the anger was something else. Fear. They were all scared of what else might come out. Agent Chen knocked on my car window. Ms. Rodriguez? We need to talk about your grandmother's safety. Can you come back inside? Back in the bank conference room, she spread out files that made my stomach turn. Photos of elderly people, bank statements, forged documents. Danny's victims weren't just random clients. They were people who trusted him. People who'd invited him into their homes, shared family dinners with him. Your brother is sophisticated, Agent Chen said, her voice clinical. He specifically targeted clients with early-stage dementia or those who were socially isolated. He'd build relationships over months, sometimes years, before making his move. She showed me a photo of an elderly man in a wheelchair. This is Mr. Petrov. Danny was his power of attorney. Legitimate at first. But over 18 months, he transferred nearly $300,000 from Mr. Petrov's accounts to shell companies he'd created. When Mr. Petrov's daughter tried to visit, Danny told her the old man had specifically requested no visitors. The cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just theft. This was psychological torture. Danny had isolated these people, made them dependent on him, then robbed them blind while they trusted him completely. How many? I asked. 17 confirmed victims, so far. We're still investigating. Agent Chen leaned forward. But your grandmother might be in immediate danger. Based on the timeline, Danny typically escalates when he feels cornered. The fact that he tried to access her account the day after a confrontation suggests he's desperate. My phone rang. Grandma's number. I answered on speaker. Mija. Her voice was weak, confused. Danny is here. He says we need to go to the bank together. He says there's been a mistake with my account. The blood drained from my face. Grandma, where are you? At home. He's being so helpful, saying he'll drive me. But something feels wrong. He keeps asking me to sign papers, and I can't read them without my glasses. Agent Chen was already on her radio, calling for backup. I tried to keep my voice calm. Grandma, don't sign anything. Tell Danny you're tired and need to rest. I tried, but he's insisting. He says it's urgent. Then in a whisper, "He's not acting like my Danny." His eyes looked different. The line went dead. Agent Chin grabbed my arm. "We need to go.
Now.
Our units are 10 minutes out, but if he's panicking." We raced through the streets, my mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. Danny had always been calculating, controlled, but cornered animals were dangerous. And if he thought Grandma was the key to his freedom, or if he blamed her for his exposure, he won't hurt her, I said, more to convince myself than Agent Chin. She's his grandmother. "Ms. Rodriguez, your brother has stolen nearly $2 million from elderly people. He's facing federal charges that could put him away for decades. People do desperate things when they're facing that kind of time." We pulled up to Grandma's house just as Danny's black BMW was backing out of the driveway. Through the passenger window, I could see Grandma slumped against the door, her eyes closed. "She's unconscious," Agent Chin said into her radio. "Suspect is mobile with the victim." The chase lasted 12 minutes. Danny drove like a man with nothing to lose, running red lights, weaving through traffic. I followed in Agent Chen's car, my heart pounding every time I saw Grandma's gray hair through the rear window. He finally stopped at Mercy General Hospital, screeching into the emergency parking lot. For a moment, I thought he was bringing her for help. Then I saw him dragging her limp body from the car, not toward the hospital entrance, but toward the parking garage. "He's using her as leverage," Agent Chin said. Classic hostage scenario. The next hour was a blur of police cars, FBI negotiators, and news vans. Danny had barricaded himself on the third floor of the parking garage with Grandma. The negotiator, a calm woman named Detective Walsh, established phone contact. Danny's demands were insane. He wanted all charges dropped, a guarantee of immunity, and $1 million in cash. In exchange, he'd release Grandma unharmed. But his voice on the speakerphone sounded unhinged, paranoid. He kept insisting that I had orchestrated everything, that I was the real criminal. "She's been planning this for years," he screamed into the phone. "My own sister, trying to frame me. She's jealous because I made something of myself while she's a nobody." Even in crisis, even facing federal charges, he couldn't stop himself from putting me down. That familiar cruelty that had shaped my entire childhood. But then Detective Walsh asked him about the other victims. "What about Mr. Petrov, Danny? What about Mrs. Chen? Were they all part of your sister's plan too?" The silence stretched for 30 seconds. When Danny spoke again, his voice was different. Quieter. Those were business investments. They knew the risks." "Business investments?" Detective Walsh pressed. "You told Mrs. Chen you were setting up a trust fund for her grandchildren. Then you emptied her retirement account. She was old. She was going to die anyway. At least this way the money was useful." The words hit me like a slap. This wasn't the brother I'd grown up with. This was a stranger wearing his face. Someone who could justify stealing from dying people because they were going to die anyway. Agent Chin saw my expression. Narcissistic personality disorder often includes complete lack of empathy. Your brother genuinely doesn't understand why what he did was wrong. Around sunset, something changed. Danny's voice over the radio became more frantic. "She's not waking up. I gave her something to calm her down, but she's not waking up." Detective Walsh's professional calm cracked slightly. "What did you give her, Danny?" "Just some pills. From her medicine cabinet. She was getting agitated, so I crushed them up and put them in her water. They were her pills, so they should be safe." The paramedic standing next to me went pale. Jesus Christ. He drugged an 85-year-old woman with her own medications, without knowing dosages or interactions. Detective Walsh was already coordinating with the medical team. "Danny, we need to get your grandmother to a doctor. She needs immediate medical attention."
No.
"You'll arrest me the second I let her go. I'm not stupid. Danny, if she dies, you're looking at murder charges. Help us help her." The next few minutes were the longest of my life. Danny went silent. No response to radio calls. The tactical team was preparing to move in when we heard his voice again, barely a whisper. I can't feel her pulse. The SWAT team moved faster than I thought possible. Within 90 seconds, they had Danny in custody and paramedics working on Grandma. She was barely breathing, her skin gray and clammy. "Digitalis poisoning," the paramedics said as they loaded her into the ambulance. "From her heart medication. In an elderly person, even a small overdose can be fatal." I rode with her to the hospital, holding her cold hand while the paramedics worked. She was unconscious, but every few minutes she'd squeeze my fingers slightly, like she was fighting to stay with us. In the ICU waiting room, the full scope of Danny's crimes began to unfold. Agent Chin showed me files that painted a picture of systematic, calculated evil. He hadn't just stolen money. He'd destroyed lives. Mrs. Patterson, a widow, had lost her house because Danny had convinced her to take out a reverse mortgage and give him the proceeds for investment. She was now living in a nursing home, telling anyone who'd listen that her nice lawyer boy was coming back for her. Mr. Jameson had signed over power of attorney to Danny after his wife died, thinking he was ensuring his estate would be properly managed. Danny had liquidated everything and disappeared the money into offshore accounts. Mr. Jameson spent his final months believing he'd lost his mind and somehow misplaced his life savings. The cruelest case was Sarah Mills, a retired teacher with mild dementia. Danny had convinced her that her own children were trying to steal from her. He'd changed her will, isolated her from her family, and spent 3 years systematically draining her accounts while she defended him against her own kids' concerns. She died alone, Agent Shin said quietly. Her children tried to visit, but Danny had told the nursing home staff that they were abusive. She spent her last months thinking her family had abandoned her. I excused myself and threw up in the hospital bathroom. This wasn't just about money. Danny had weaponized these people's trust, their loneliness, their medical conditions. He turned their final years into a nightmare of confusion and isolation. When I came back, Agent Chen had more news. The bank records show something interesting. Your grandmother's will wasn't just changed recently. It's been changed 4 times in the past year. Each time, Danny received a larger portion of the inheritance. She showed me copies of the documents. Grandma's signature got progressively shakier with each version. The final will, signed just 2 weeks ago, left everything to Danny and specifically excluded me due to mental instability and drug addiction. Drug addiction? I laughed bitterly. I don't even drink coffee. Your brother has been building a case against you for months. He's been telling people you've been stealing from your grandmother, that you've been pressuring her to change your will. He's been setting you up as the fall guy. The pieces clicked into place. Danny's smirk at the family reunion. His confidence when he threatened me. He'd been planning this all along. If I hadn't recorded our conversations, if I hadn't exposed him publicly, I would have been the one facing charges. A doctor approached our table. Are you here for Mrs. Rodriguez? My heart stopped. Is she? She's stable. The digitalis is clearing her system, but it was touch and go for a while. Another hour, and we might have lost her. He sat down heavily. I have to ask, how did she ingest such a large amount of her heart medication? I explained what had happened. The doctor's expression grew darker as I spoke. That's not accidental overdose. Someone would have to crush up at least 6 pills and dissolve them in liquid. And they'd have to know it would be dangerous. He paused. Your brother is a lawyer. He would have researched the effects. The implication hit me like a truck. Danny hadn't just panicked and grabbed random pills. He'd intentionally chosen her heart medication, knowing it could kill her. This wasn't a desperate mistake. It was attempted murder. Agent Chin was already on her phone, updating the charges. Attempted murder of an elderly person. That's life in prison territory. I sat there in the fluorescent hospital lighting, trying to process that my brother, the golden child who'd been praised his entire life, had tried to kill our grandmother rather than face consequences for his crimes. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. The lawyer says Danny is claiming temporary insanity. He says the stress of your false accusations drove him to a breakdown. We're starting a legal defense fund. Even now, even after everything, she was defending him. I showed the message to Agent Chen. That's not uncommon, she said. Families often can't accept that someone they love is capable of evil. They'll create elaborate explanations rather than face the truth. But I was done creating explanations. Done making excuses. Done pretending that Danny's cruelty was somehow my fault or my responsibility. I walked into Grandma's ICU room. She was awake, oxygen mask covering her face, but her eyes were alert. When she saw me, she tried to remove the mask. Leave it on, I said, taking her hand. You need to rest. She shook her head weakly and pulled the mask aside. Danny, she whispered. He's sick. Something's wrong with him. I know, Grandma. I know. I signed papers. He said they were to protect me from you. He said you were trying to steal from me. Tears ran down her cheeks. I believed him. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. He's very good at lying. She gripped my hand tighter. The pills. He said they were vitamins. Said they'd help me feel better. But I knew. I knew they tasted wrong. The full horror of it sank in. She'd known Danny was poisoning her, but she'd been too weak to stop him. She trusted him right up until the moment she realized he was trying to kill her. He kept saying it was for the best, she continued. That I was old and sick, and it would be easier for everyone if I just went to sleep. He said you wouldn't have to take care of me anymore. I had to leave the room. I stood in the hallway, sobbing, while nurses walked past pretending not to notice. Danny hadn't just tried to kill her. He tried to make her complicit in her own murder. He'd convinced her that dying was a favor to everyone else. Agent Chin found me there 20 minutes later. The DA wants to meet with you tomorrow. With your grandmother's testimony and the evidence we've gathered, they're confident they can get a conviction on all charges. What's he facing? 17 counts of elder abuse, multiple counts of fraud, attempted murder, kidnapping. She calculated in her head. He's looking at life in prison without parole. I should have felt satisfied. Justice was being served. But all I felt was exhausted. 30 years of family dynamics, 30 years of being the scapegoat, 30 years of everyone believing Danny was perfect while I was the problem. My phone rang. My mother again. I can't talk to you right now, Mom. Please, just listen. I know you're angry, but Danny is still your brother. He made mistakes, but he's not evil. He's just lost. Lost. I could hear the hysteria creeping into my voice. Mom, he tried to murder Grandma. He stole from elderly people. He's not lost, he's a sociopath. Don't say that. Don't you dare say that about my son. Your son? What about me? What about Grandma? What about all the people he hurt? The silence stretched between us. Finally, she spoke, her voice cold. I think you've done enough damage to this family. She hung up. I stared at my phone, realizing that nothing had really changed. Danny was in custody, facing life in prison, and somehow I was still the villain in my mother's story. Still the one who'd damaged the family by refusing to stay silent about his crimes. Agent Chun appeared at my elbow. Family dynamics are complicated. Sometimes people can't face the truth about someone they love. She's going to support him through the trial. Probably visit him in prison. Tell everyone who'll listen that he's innocent. Probably. But that's not your responsibility. The next morning, I visited Grandma again. She was sitting up, color returning to her cheeks, but her eyes held a sadness I'd never seen before. I need to ask you something, she said. Did you know? About Danny? Before the reunion. I told her everything. The discovery of the checks, the recordings, the confrontation. She listened without interrupting, occasionally closing her eyes as if absorbing physical blows. I should have listened to you, she said finally. All those times you tried to tell me something was wrong with him. Even when you were children, you'd come to me upset about something he'd done, and I'd make excuses for him. You couldn't have known it would go this far. But I knew he was cruel. I knew he enjoyed hurting you. I thought he'd grow out of it. She took my hand. I failed you. I failed all those people he hurt. We sat in silence for a while, both processing decades of missed signs, ignored red flags, and enabled behavior. What happens now? She asked. Now he faces trial, and we figure out how to rebuild. The family will never forgive you, you know. Your mother, your aunts and uncles. They'll blame you for destroying Danny's life. I know. Are you prepared for that? Being the family pariah? I thought about it honestly. I've been the family pariah my whole life. At least now I know I earned it for something worthwhile. She smiled for the first time since I'd known her. My brave granddaughter. I'm so proud of you. The trial began 3 months later. Danny's defense team argued temporary insanity, claiming the stress of false accusations had driven him to a mental breakdown. They painted me as a jealous sibling who'd orchestrated an elaborate frame-up because I couldn't accept his success. I testified for 2 days, walking the jury through the evidence, the recordings, the systematic abuse of elderly victims. Danny's lawyer tried to discredit me, suggesting I was mentally unstable, that I'd forged documents and fabricated evidence out of spite. But the physical evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, forged documents, victim testimony. Mrs. Patterson wheeled herself into the courtroom to describe how Danny had stolen her home. Mr. Jameson's daughter read a statement about her father's final months, believing he'd lost his mind. The most damaging testimony came from Danny himself. Against his lawyer's advice, he took the stand to set the record straight. Within an hour, his narcissism and lack of empathy were on full display. He showed no remorse for his victims, instead focusing on how the charges had ruined his reputation and destroyed his career. When the prosecutor asked about Grandma, Danny's mask slipped completely. She's old and confused. She doesn't understand what she's saying. It's cruel to put her through this. You mean it's cruel to put her through testifying about how you tried to poison her? I was trying to help her. She was agitated, scared. I gave her something to calm her down. 6 crushed heart pills in her water glass. I didn't know how many to give her. I was trying to help. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Danny showed no emotion as the verdict was read. But when the judge sentenced him to life in prison without possibility of parole, he finally broke. Not with remorse or recognition of his crimes, but with rage. This is insane, he screamed. I'm a respected lawyer. I help people. My sister is lying about everything. She's mentally ill. She's always been jealous of me. The bailiffs had to restrain him as he continued screaming about conspiracies and frame-ups. Right until the end, he was convinced he was the victim. In the hallway afterward, I was approached by several of Danny's victims' families. They thanked me for coming forward, for giving them justice. Mrs. Patterson's daughter hugged me with tears in her eyes. You saved other people from going through what my mother went through, she said. You're a hero. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like someone who'd finally stopped being a coward. My mother didn't attend the sentencing. Neither did most of the family. In the months that followed, I learned that they'd closed ranks around Danny's innocence. They visited him in prison, sent him money, and maintained that he'd been railroaded by a corrupt system and a vindictive sister. Family gatherings became awkward affairs where I was barely tolerated. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Children were warned not to get too close to crazy Aunt Maria. I became the family ghost, present but not acknowledged. But Grandma and I grew closer than we'd ever been. She moved into assisted living and I visited twice a week. We talked about everything, her childhood, her regrets, her hopes for the future. She told me stories about my grandfather, about raising my mother, about watching her children grow up. I see now why you were always so angry as a child, she said one afternoon. You were trying to tell us the truth about Danny, and we wouldn't listen. We made you carry that burden alone. I wasn't angry. I was scared. Of Danny. Of becoming like him. Of everyone thinking I was like him. She took my hand. You're nothing like him. You're the best of us. 6 months after the sentencing, I got a call from Agent Chen. Danny had been attacked in prison by another inmate whose grandmother had been scammed by someone similar to Danny. He was in intensive care with severe injuries. I thought you should know, she said. In case family members contact you. They did. My mother called, sobbing, begging me to help somehow. He's your brother, she kept saying. Whatever he did, he's still your brother. But he wasn't. Not anymore. Maybe he never had been. Brothers don't try to frame their siblings for crimes they didn't commit. Brothers don't try to poison their grandmothers. Brothers don't systematically destroy the lives of vulnerable people. I didn't visit him in the hospital. I didn't send flowers or cards. I didn't attend the family prayer vigil my mother organized. I'd spent 30 years being responsible for Danny's actions, making excuses for his behavior, absorbing the fallout from his cruelty. I was done. Danny recovered from his injuries, but something had changed. Prison had broken his sense of invulnerability. He began writing letters to his victims, asking for forgiveness, claiming he'd found God and realized the error of his ways. Most of the letters were returned unopened. The few that were read were dismissed as manipulation. Mr. Jameson's daughter sent Danny's letter to a local newspaper along with a statement about how convenient it was that he'd found religion after being beaten nearly to death. He wrote to me too. A 12-page letter filled with apologies, explanations, and pleas for understanding. He blamed his behavior on stress, on the pressure to succeed, on a medical condition that had affected his judgment. He claimed he'd never meant to hurt anyone, that everything had spiraled out of control. I read it once, then threw it away. A year later, Grandma died peacefully in her sleep. The family blamed me for her death, claiming the stress of the trial and Danny's imprisonment had killed her. At the funeral, my mother delivered a eulogy that painted Grandma as a victim of family discord and false accusations. I sat in the back row, ignored by everyone except a few of Danny's victims' families who'd come to pay their respects. Mrs. Patterson wheeled herself over to me after the service. "She was proud of you," she said. "Your grandmother. She told me that last time I saw her. Said you were the strongest person she'd ever known." I don't feel strong. Strength isn't about feeling strong. It's about doing what's right when it's hard. In her will, Grandma left everything to me. Not because Danny was in prison, but because she'd changed it months before his arrest. She'd been planning it since she discovered the forged documents, but she'd kept quiet to protect me from Danny's retaliation. The family contested the will, of course. They claimed I'd manipulated her, that she'd been mentally incompetent, that the will was invalid. But her lawyer had been meticulous in documenting her mental state and her reasons for the changes. The inheritance wasn't huge, a modest house, some savings, her car. But it represented something more important: validation. Someone had finally chosen to believe me over Danny. Someone had finally seen the truth. I used part of the money to establish a foundation for elder abuse prevention. We provide legal resources for families dealing with financial exploitation, and we train bank employees to recognize the signs of elder abuse. It's small, but it's something. Danny continues to write letters from prison. To me, to family members, to his victims. He started a blog about prison reform and wrongful convictions. He gives interviews to podcasters about the flaws in the justice system and how family dynamics can be weaponized against innocent people. Some people believe him. There are online communities dedicated to proving his innocence, conspiracy theorists who think he was framed by a corrupt system. They send me threatening messages, call me a liar, accuse me of destroying an innocent man's life. But most people see through him. The evidence was too overwhelming, his behavior too consistent with a lifetime pattern of manipulation and abuse. The families of his victims continue to speak out, reminding the world that behind his articulate defenses were real people whose lives he destroyed. I'm in therapy now, working through decades of gaslighting and family trauma. Learning to trust my own perceptions, to recognize that I wasn't the problem child I'd been told I was. Learning that standing up for the truth doesn't make you the villain, even when your family treats you like one. The therapist says I have PTSD from growing up in a family system that consistently invalidated my reality. She says it's common for scapegoats to struggle with self-doubt, to question their own memories and perceptions. She says healing takes time. Some days are harder than others. Some days I wake up wondering if I really am the monster my family thinks I am. If I destroyed an innocent man's life out of jealousy and spite. If I'm the one who's mentally unstable, who can't be trusted, who ruins everything she touches. But then I remember Mrs. Patterson in her wheelchair, thanking me for giving her justice. I remember Mr. Jameson's daughter, crying as she described her father's final months. I remember Grandma in the ICU, whispering that Danny had tried to poison her. And I remember that sometimes doing the right thing means accepting that people you love will never forgive you for it. The family still has their Christmas gatherings, their birthday parties, their summer barbecues. I'm not invited. They've created a narrative where Danny is the victim of a corrupt system and a jealous sister, and I'm the villain who destroyed their perfect family. But I've built a new life. I have friends who know the truth, who've seen the evidence, who support me. I have my work with the foundation, helping other families recognize and report elder abuse. I have my therapy, my healing, my slowly growing sense of self-worth. And I have the knowledge that 17 elderly people got justice because I refused to stay silent. That future victims were protected because I chose truth over family loyalty. That sometimes, being the family pariah is better than being complicit in evil. Danny will die in prison. He'll never hurt another elderly person, never steal another life savings, never manipulate another vulnerable victim. The world is safer because I spoke up. That has to be enough. Because in the end, the truth doesn't care about family dynamics or golden child narratives or who gets invited to Christmas dinner. The truth just is. And sometimes, that's all the validation you need.